Good morning, buenos dias, bonjour, willkommen, hola. Welcome to Mobile Metron. Konnichiwa, aloha, namaste, assalamu alaikum, etc., etc. Welcome to my noisy rooftop. Anybody on here this morning? All right, let's see. Jason, you're the first one I see your name on here this morning, so you get a star. Karen, hello. Good to see who else is on here. Many of you I've already communicated with during the week through our 1111s. Hey, Constance, I see you on here. Who else we got? Yep, you're going to heaven. You're approved, Jason. Hey, Michelle. Ed, good to see you on here. Hey, Greg. Hey, Henry. Hello. Miss Leona, you and Mr. Ernie. Hey, Carl. Top of the morning to you. And Ken's downstairs watching. Who else is on this morning? Trying to find that. When I get out here in the sunlight, I can't see your comments. So that's why I'm back down here. Hey, Tina. Hey, John. Hey, Miss Roz. Good to see you on here. Hey, Colonel Rogers. Hello. Hey, Win. How you doing, bud? Y'all say hey to each other, and I'll get started. Hey, Fred. Good to see you guys. Some of y'all haven't feel like I feel like I haven't seen in a year. Hey, Ave. Oh, is today Pastor's Appreciation Day? Thank you, Avery, for appreciating me. Hey, Jeanette from down in Florida. Hey, Sarah from up in your neck of the woods. Danny, good to see you on here. Hey, Vicky. Good crowd this morning. And it's good because I've got a good word for you. Sir Ken of Marshall. That's when you know when you love somebody, when you or like them because you play with their name. My one of our concierge's name here is Princeton, and every time I walk by, he's always Princetonian or some. Hey, Beach. Some. Hey, Deirdre. Some version. Hey, Deirdre. Yesterday. We were in the park and for Pride, and I was telling Ken, I said, man, I'm glad Deirdre chose next Sunday to dedicate the girls and not tomorrow, because I totally forgot about Pride this weekend. So anyway, it'll be great next weekend. We're dedicating Amelia and Penelope out on Lake Claramere in Piedmont Park. Sir Jim of Swilley, that's exactly right. Yes, it is good timing. So it'll be nice. That time of day will be nice too. While you're continuing to log on, let me give you some reminders, some announcements. The next thing on the Metron calendar. Well, first of all, thanks for everybody who's been tuning in every night at 11:11. It seems like Metron's got all these subgenres. It's like there's the Metron people that come to the theater. There's also the Metron people that think they're a part of Metron that have never been there. But I don't like, okay, if you consider me your guy, all right. Oh, you're going to the cruise? That's cool, Eddie. Ed. Hey, Heather. Anyway, so there's that, and then there's the whole community that's part of the meditation weekends, which there's a whole bunch of people that come to all of those that have never been to the theater, and that would be you, yes. Hey, Galen. And then there's a bunch of people that have come to the theater into our 9th year that have never gone on a meditation retreat. So those are kind of two separate entities. And now the 11:11 crowd, the night owls who stay up, and that would also be you. The night owls who stay up, and somebody told me this week I was their Jimmy Fallon, which is cool. I thought, I'll take it. But so I'll just say this: in my Father's house are many rooms, and can't wait. So anyway, the 1111ers. Hey, Linda, from up in Michigan. Anyway, a week from today, like I said, I'll be doing Deirdre's, the dedication of her girls. Then 2 weeks from today, we'll be up in Charlotte. I'm doing a wedding up there. So the wedding is on Saturday. So I'm assuming, I think we'll probably spend the night, and I'll just stream from Charlotte. And then 3 weeks from today, yeah, well, it's a little earlier for you, Linda. I know you're a night owl, but when it's 11:11 here, what is it? 8:11 there? Are you 2 hours earlier than that? 9:11. Anyway, 3 weeks from today, we'll be in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga this time of year is so beautiful. You're gonna love it if you've never been there. Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm getting to that in just a minute, John. Yeah, and by the way, there are a lot of people who watch it the following morning. So, oh, you have the same time as us? No. In Michigan? No, that can't be right. You're earlier than us in Michigan, right? Am I in crazy world? Am I taking crazy pills this morning? Michigan is on Eastern Standard Time? Wow. I did not know that. I'm going to take your word for it because you live there, but I don't see how that's possible. But all right. Anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, meditation weekend. That's crazy. I did not know that. No, I'm pretty good at geography. Did you know Michigan was on Eastern Standard Time? So you're in Wisconsin, and that's 10:11. Wow. Yeah, I got to look at the time zone maps again. Anyway, October 29th and 30th, we'll be in Chattanooga. We do our hey Stephanie. Wait, what are you saying? Sure did. What did I sure do? Hey Doug, good to see you on here. Anyway, we do if you don't know, we do a sunset meditation on the Saturday and a sunrise on the Sunday. Why are y'all saying yes? What did I just say? And I've already forgotten that I just said. What are the yeses and yes, sure did? Hey Earl, are you back from the UK? Your pictures were beautiful. Anyway, October 29th and 30th, meditation weekend number 16. Doubting me. Oh yeah, I did doubt you. Okay. Look, if you heard all the comments I got this morning just before going on, you'd be amazed at the clarity that I have. Because right up until broadcast time, people are sending me crazy messages that I just have to say, compartmentalize that and stay in the zone. Oh, that's cool. Yes, and exactly, Ed. Oh, the time changes east of Illinois? Interesting. Okay. See, I can learn without y'all all piling on me and judging me. I don't know where all that's coming from, but whatever. Sorry, I didn't know every little thing. I'm not as all powerfully omniscient, apparently, as some of y'all are. Anyway, that's going to be... Oh, you at Piedmont? Yeah, Kimberly, I don't know if we're going to make it back. We walked all the way there yesterday. I don't know. We may or may not be there for the parade. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But it was fun yesterday. It was a good time. Anyway, I've been trying to make this announcement for the last 5 minutes. All right, anybody else got any jokes you got to say? Okay, I got it. I understand. All right. Your story has become tiresome. Anyway, we will be there, and then I guess it's the following Sunday. We'll be back in the theater, November 6th. We're in the theater the first. Actually, I think I'm hearing some people going toward Pride right now. Hey, Brenda. Thank you, Danny. We're in the theater first Sundays of the month, so we'll be there November 6th. I've got Johnny Almanza there, the cello player that I told you about a few weeks ago that I just heard out playing on the sidewalk, and I really loved his stuff. So thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie, you and Danny and me are going to go start another church. Hey, Seth. Anyway, so remember, October 29th and 30th, Meditation Weekend 16, and then November 6th in the theater at, hey Jamie, at Landmarks Midtown Art Cinema. And then we'll be back in the theater first Sunday of December. And go ahead, I don't have all the details worked out yet, but we do have the venue booked. So go ahead and if you want to come to the Metron Christmas event, lock that in for Saturday, December 17th at the Red Light Cafe in Midtown Atlanta, and you're gonna really enjoy that. So anyway, there's all of that. Give me some affirmations, and then we'll do some breaths, and then I'm gonna alter history with the word I'm about to speak. Okay? Yeah, I might not know everything about the time zones, but I'm about to affect some amazing change that's going to help all y'all. Anyway, we're going to start with an affirmation and move up to the I am. I am is the highest affirmation you can make. So we'll say, I am blessed. I am a blessing. I am healed. I am a healing, or I am healing. I am joyful. I am joy. Now see, y'all got Doug Wentz making jokes. I bind the spirit of joking. I am. I am serious. No, I am free. I am freedom. I am. It's coming, Linda. I am whole. I am wholeness. I am successful. I am success. I am abundantly supplied. Yeah, Rosalind, right after that, I met him. It was a very, you must not have heard when I talked about it. It was a very synchronistic meeting, and it was for him as well. It's definitely a cool connection. You'll like this guy a lot. All right, that's enough of the affirmations. We'll do a little bit of breath work. In through the nose, hold it, and out through the mouth. In, hold, out. Beautiful. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. There's a verse of scripture strong in my spirit this morning, and when I do refer to the scriptures, I'm mostly in the Gospels, some in the epistles, but once in a while I venture back to the Old Testament, and in the 51st Psalm, it's the song that David wrote when he was repenting for his situation, not just with Bathsheba, but with her husband Uriah the Hittite. And I'm going to give you a little backstory on that. I'm going to make a couple of pop culture references, and City noises. I don't mind. I'm not afraid of Leviticus, John. I go back there once in a while. I just rightly divide it. I don't wrongly connect it and handle it. Anyway, I'm going to give you some backstory on this. 2 verses particularly that I want to acknowledge. One of them is Psalm 51 verse 16, where he says, "Behold, you do not desire sacrifice or burnt offerings. If you did, I would gladly give them." I refer to that sometimes when I'm talking about sort of reimagining why Jesus died on the cross. I don't think it was a sacrifice for sin as we have been taught. I think it was the fixing of a misperception. The Creator says to Adam, "Who told you you were naked?" Jesus hangs naked on the cross and says, "Who told you you were unrighteous?" So I don't believe it was, and yes, I know he was wounded for our transgressions, but it was the transgressions that we perceived that we had. The same Creator who could have said to Adam, "Who told you you were naked?" could also say to us, "Who told you you were transgressor?" He was bruised for our iniquities. Who told you you were iniquitous? And I've talked about this at length, and that's why I share a lot of stuff that, particularly, one of the, well, I don't want to say particular teacher because I share a lot of teachers. Several teachers are really strong in this that I share on Facebook frequently. And so that's in no way to trivialize or diminish the cross or the atonement. It is, however, to understand it and not make it into something that it wasn't, that even Jesus didn't see it that way. Because David says, you don't really desire sacrifice. He goes on to say, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, or you could say humility and transparency. And so I'll come back to that in a minute. But then if you back it up to verse 6 is really what I want to focus on. I'm going to come back to 16, but let me go to 6 for a minute. I got to stop reading y'all's comments. Let me get on task here. No, I'm not going to make the Christians mad. I'm going to set them free. Thank you. Anyway, he says, you desire truth in verse 6 is, behold, you desire truth in the inward parts. And David, that wasn't that unusual for David to say. David had a tendency to be very introspective. He would say a lot of things like, create me a clean heart, renew a right spirit within me. And in the 19th Psalm, he says, who can understand his errors, cleanse me from secret faults, and deliver me from presumptuous sins. So he was, if David were alive today, first of all, he'd probably be medicated for being bipolar. And secondly, he'd probably be in some kind of therapy, because he was constantly trying to figure out what made him tick and why did he do the things that he did. Paul had a little bit of that. Like in Romans 7, Paul would say things like, the things I would do, I find myself not doing, and vice versa. And you know, there's something to be said for the examined life, not to constantly be down on yourself and have sin consciousness, but to own your mistakes and understand why you do what you do. That's a valid journey. That some people, like if somebody's a true sociopath, they have no concept of that. Like they just think everything they do is fine. I don't believe I'm a sinner, but I also don't think everything I do needs to go unchecked. And I have to take responsibility for mistakes that I make and turn them into teachable moments. And it doesn't make me fear God. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out fear. But it does make me want to be the best version of myself. And if you understand what the cross is not, and what God's not doing, it actually sets you free to become a better person. The very fact that he says, you desire the truth of the inward parts, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit. The fact that so many people just live reckless lives and then play the sinner saved by grace card. I'm just a sinner saved by grace, sinner saved by grace. That's fine in theory, but what it actually does when you don't believe in personal integrity, it actually creates this culture in which people don't have to have any kind of morality or sense of right and wrong, or as long as they just say, I'm covered by the blood. Like I remember when I was a kid, and we used to play. There was different versions of tag. There was freeze tag and all kind of different tag. But if you ever played tag with your friends, there usually was something called base, or depending on the kids in your neighborhood, there's also something called timeout. And then there would be these other clauses, like among some kids you play with, you'd be on base, but there would be this caveat to base, like 1, 2, 3, get off my apple tree. In other words, you could only stay in base for so long. The one that, for people like me who were raised, to me, smoking cigarettes was the worst thing you could possibly do. And so when I'd be with church kids, sometimes we would play. I mean, this was considered so dark and sexy that we had to say it in hushed tones. Like you play with church kids, the kind of church kids I grew up with, and they would say, "Do y'all play cigarette tag?" And you have to look around like, "Yeah." Well, what you did with cigarette tag is you'd run around, and if somebody was about to tag you, you'd have to squat down and say the brand of a cigarette. You have to say, Pall Mall, Lucky Strikes, Marlboro. And if you could say that, then they couldn't touch you. And so you'd have to kind of know. This is back when they used to run cigarette ads on TV, so you were more cognizant of brand names. But that was just considered like, I mean, you always repented after you played cigarette tag, because that was just so evil. And I find that people who misunderstand the need for personal truth and just always want to play the I'm a sinner saved by grace card, they're like people who play cigarette tag. It's like you find them out in something and they're like, sinner saved by grace, sinner saved by grace. And so now you can't touch them. The other thing, the flip side of that I hate, is when somebody really ticks you off and gets a reaction out of you and then plays the Christian card on you. Oh, I thought you were supposed to be a Christian. I hate, don't manipulate the Jesus card. I really hate that. I've been doing this for a long time. I see right through it. It's like, it makes me avoid people when they do that. Jesus says to the woman at the well, who's very candid about her life. She doesn't have any concept of being saved by grace. She says, I don't have a husband. And Jesus said, you have well said, for you've had 5 husbands and you live with a man now who's not your husband. And the Father is looking for people just like you. What? People that are with lots of women who are with lots of different men? No, people who tell the truth about their life and are candid about their life and transparent. That's when Jesus said, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, in spirit and in transparency, in spirit and authenticity. And, one thing, for whatever you say about gay pride, and I didn't see as many angry preachers out there yesterday as I have in years past. What I did notice is the guys out there were a lot younger than I'm used to seeing. And this one guy had a big Jesus is Lord t-shirt, and he's just telling everybody go into hell. And I thought, it's so ironic that you're saying Jesus is Lord and you're blasting all these gay people, because Jesus actually never said anything about same-sex relationships. It would serve you better to have a t-shirt printed up that says Moses is Lord. and you know, consider yourself more of an Old Testament kind of guy. Anyway, what I noticed is, just looking around, how happy everybody seemed. Like everybody just seemed, and there's some people that had outrageous costumes on, over the top, and I saw a couple of people that were dressed provocatively, but for the most part, it was just like lots of rainbows and lots of, you know, lots of colors, whatever. But it was interesting being in an environment where you can tell people don't feel judged here. This is a group of people who have lived their lives feeling judged in society, and now they're here among their peers. They're in their tribe, and there's just, it's the one time of year I see the most joy in Piedmont Park when I go there, and Pride's not even that much of my jam. I mean, I go there to, you know, support the community, but it's not really my thing. I don't have a booth out there anymore, and I don't have no desire to march in a parade or anything. But it is kind of interesting to see when judgment is removed from people, just how happy and sweet and supportive and laughing everybody is. And not in an evil way, just in a way of like, oh, this is what unjudged human beings sound like when you just listen to the sound of laughter. So why did David say, you don't desire sacrifice, you desire truth in the inward parts? All right, most of you are familiar with the story. I want to bring up one aspect of the story that usually I have a tendency to leave out when I talk about it. David, king of Israel, walks out onto his rooftop, much like this is right here. Houses at this time were nearly always had rooftop patios that people used. And across the way, he saw a woman who was either bathing on her roof or in a place where he could see her from his roof. And this was before porn. He stands there and watches her take a bath, and he's aroused by it. So, and let me say, David already had a harem at this point. David had 10 children with multiple women. That's why when the Old Testament talks about adultery, I'm like, what did y'all even consider adultery? Because I don't even know what your definition would have been. When people say, we need to get back to biblical marriage, I think, well, biblical marriage is a man having a harem and buying and selling women. That's why, you know, I'm trying to keep politics out of this, but if you care about your marriage, you might want to think about who you vote for in the midterms, because there's a big attack about to come on same-sex marriage. And that's why the president's trying to get it codified in Congress so that it can't be just overturned like previous things have been. So anyway, David says to one of his guys, who is she? And they say, that's Uriah the Hittite's wife. And he says, I want her, bring her here to the palace. Now, you got to fill in the blanks. It just says that she went to the palace and slept with him. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean, was that against her will? She had no choice in the matter because that was the king and she was a woman? Could be. Was she flattered by it and wanted to follow up on it? Could be. I don't know. Basically, the biblical story just gives you bullet points. So you have to pretty much use your imagination to figure out, like, why did she go sleep with him? Did she consider it a rape? Was she kicking and screaming? Or was she like, you know, what's up, King David, let's go? I don't know. But, so she goes and sleeps with him, and she gets pregnant. When David finds out that she's pregnant, it's not that he's that upset about the pregnancy. David was very, I don't know if promiscuous is the word, libidinous. David was a very sexually charged man. When you read about his relationship with Jonathan, I don't think David was gay. I don't think he would identify even as bisexual. I think Jonathan was. And their relationship, I mean, unless you are just intentionally naive, when you read about them meeting and stripping down in front of each other and kissing each other and him saying your love was greater than the love of any woman. I mean, it's not rocket science. Are you saying David was gay? No, I'm saying David was just sexual. He just was. He's one of those guys that could maybe consider pansexual. Like he could have sex with anybody. But clearly there was a bond between David and Jonathan that was tantamount to a marriage. And part of the reason Saul was so furious with him was it was a very complicated relationship, and part of the anger was because of his relationship with his son Jonathan. One of these days I'll get into it and really teach all of that, but that's not where I'm going today. So let me stay on point. So when David hears that Bathsheba's pregnant, again, we don't know how he knew that. Somehow she must have clearly gotten word back to David. So what he does, instead of taking care of it, you can say, well, abortion didn't exist back then. Yes, it did. Moses instituted abortion. Moses is the one that said, if a man thinks, back in the book of Numbers, he said, if a man thinks his wife has been unfaithful to him and the baby's not his, she comes for the elders and drinks the stuff that makes her miscarry, and that's how she's revealed as an adulteress. And it certainly was an existence in the Roman Empire. But what David does, and don't start comments about abortion, because you're going to get that's a red herring. You're going to get me in a different topic. That I don't want to hear about Herschel Walker or any of that. Just save that for your pages. I have my own opinions about that, which it probably isn't hard for you to figure out, but that's not my purpose here today. So what he does, and this is where the wickedness really is. If there's such a thing as degree of sins, it's the lusting after this other man's wife is one thing. Committing adultery with her is another thing. But then David reveals this part of himself that's just really dark, really manipulative. Because Uriah is like this leader of the army. So he sends word to Uriah and he says, let Uriah come home and have a weekend or a week with his wife. Let's give him a break. And his intention is I'm sure if Uriah comes home, he's probably going to sleep with his wife Bathsheba. And so when he finds out that she's pregnant, he'll never suspect that it's not his baby. But what Uriah does, because he's such a good guy, you remember how like John McCain, who was a hero, he was not, I mean, I don't care what anybody said, he's a hero. He was a hero. But, John McCain, when he was a prisoner of war, could have gone home earlier, but he didn't. He stayed because some of his men were still prisoners of war. And the fact that a sitting president could call him a failure is, I would have never thought I would see that in my lifetime, but I have. Anyway, so what Uriah was that type of guy. So Uriah, he says, I can't take a vacation while my men are at battle. So what he does is he goes into the palace where these quarters are, where would have been his ground zero for battle. And he stays there. Because in his mind, even though he's not in the heat of battle, he's still on duty. He just feels like it's bad optics for me to be home, having a vacay with my wife while these other guys are out here getting slaughtered. So it shows you that Uriah is really a good dude. So this isn't just about the adultery piece, because David had sex with a lot of people, male and female. Even end of his life, where it says he's elderly and he's shivering in bed because his body temp drops, he specifically asks for a young woman to be put in his bed so that he can snuggle with. I mean, this is after he's an old man. He's still saying, I need a young chickie. If a nurse says, we can get you an old woman, he's like, no, I need a young woman. We can get you a blanket, an electric blanket, a hot water bottle. We can turn up the thermostat. Nope, I want a young woman. So even after David was old and decrepit, he still was sexual, and even if he wasn't virile, he could have still done it, but he still wanted to be sex adjacent. I'm not just trying to be dirty. I'm trying to tell you the Bible like it is. Because if you read the Bible through G-rated lenses, you're not going to get these stories. You're not going to understand them. The people in the Bible were just like you. They're just people who had issues, who had perversions, who had addictions. They were not walking around in some exalted state at all. And what violence. So anyway, that doesn't work. And now apparently Bathsheba's far enough along in the pregnancy that he can't play it off. And Uriah, when he sees her, is going to know, well, that's not my baby because I haven't been with you. So David, for whatever reason, either gets panicky or because of his feelings for Bathsheba, or both, he calls Joab and he says, send Uriah out to the very front lines of battle where I know he'll just get killed. And that's what happened. And Uriah was sent to the front lines of battle and was instantly murdered. So David, he's the king, so he's not, at this point, conscience isn't that big of a deal with him. But Nathan the prophet comes to him and says, he says, I want to tell you a story. He said because David had, when he was a boy, he was a shepherd. And Uriah says, there was a man who had vast flocks of sheep. And there was this one guy, all he had was one little lamb. And the man who had all the flocks and herds and more sheep than he could possibly count, takes the lamb from the kid who that was all he had. He said, what do you think should be done to him? Because he says he robs him of the only thing that he had. And David says, that man should be killed. Anybody who would do that should be killed. And Nathan says, it's you. You're that guy. Because you've got more women than you could possibly sleep with. I mean, these men, God almighty. Solomon, his son, had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That would mean if you're going to have sex with each of those women, you'd have to have sex every night for at least 3 years with a different woman just to go through your entire list of spouses. So a lot of this wasn't just about sex, it was about power. Some of these potentates would take on wives and because it was an alliance with another country. So it wasn't let me say this. Whatever your definition of marriage is, don't use the Bible for it. Because the Bible's definition of marriage is not yours. Whatever you think marriage is, that's not how the Bible people would have thought of it at all. So, he saw, you've got all these women, you have all these wives. Any woman you summon is going to come sleep with you if you ask, for whatever her motives are. And Uriah, from what we can tell, again, you have to fill in the blanks, but Uriah was just married to this one woman. He said that's all he had. You took the one David, you've had so many relationships that are meaningless to you at this point. You remember And it seemed like, the writers of the Bible was kind of on David's side about it. Remember when the Ark of the Covenant was coming back into the city, and David strips down and dances in his loincloth in front of the women, and one of his wives, Michal, looks out the window and she says, I know what you were doing. So you were just it had nothing to do with the Ark of the Covenant. You were just flashing those young girls and trying to be sexy. And David says, oh yeah? Well, next time I'll take off the loincloth and dance naked in front of them. How about that? And the scripture says that Michal was struck barren. So the Bible, I'm not saying God's a misogynist, but the Bible writers were men who wrote to men who had a very male, patriarchal viewpoint of things. I'm not saying their words weren't inspired. I'm saying the inspiration was filtered through their cultural limitations. That's just a fact. I mean, I don't have time to argue with you about that. That's just the truth. So if you want to believe in traditional marriage, that's fine, but don't back it up with the Bible, because believe me, any married person on here right now probably would not like biblical marriage. So, because in biblical marriage, a man could just write a writ of divorcement and be done with his wife. Thank you very much. You're excused. I no longer find you attractive. And she was just out of luck. I mean, he absorbed her dowry from her father, which made him wealthier. The more men married wealthy women, the wealthier they became, because this is long before alimony or child support. There was no such thing. When Abraham kicked Hagar and Ishmael out, there was no visitation on weekends. They were just like, y'all figure it out. You're out in the desert. Bye. So, history has always been stacked in favor of men, and you see it in the scriptures. So, David says, so Nathan says, you're the man. You've got all these women at your disposal, and now it's not I'm not diminishing the sexual aspect of it, but that really wasn't Nathan's point. Because of all the other people David had had sex with, Nathan never had an opinion about that. What caused Nathan to confront David is he said, not only was this all this guy had, this guy's a friend of yours, and he's faithful to you. I mean, my God, the more you hear about this story, David, the worse it gets. It'd be different if it was even the wife of an enemy. You'd be like, I guess I took your wife away from you. No, this is a guy that loves you and serves you and is faithful to you. So you take his wife and then technically have him executed. Like, good grief. And then it says, because David repents, but it does not say, for all of you pro-lifers, it does not say that Bathsheba miscarried. It said God killed the baby to punish David. The Bible is full of everything from Moses and the Exodus to Jesus and King Herod. I mean, infanticide, baby slaughter was rampant in that part of the world at that time. But there it specifically says that God killed the baby. And now they went on to conceive. The next child they conceived was Solomon. And he became, he wrote the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. I'm saying all that to say this. When David says, you desire truth in the inward parts, this wasn't some kind of superficial, I'm sorry, God, that I lusted after this woman, I'm just a man. It wasn't that. He was saying, he was having this epiphany about his own personal darkness. Like, wow, how did I become this guy? Like, the adultery was one thing, but then to have this man, this good man, I mean, that's as dark as it gets. I took all he had, and then I had him killed. Not once No, I had him killed. I tried to set him up for believing that my child was his, and then I had him killed. I mean, shoot, David. I mean, if David were a traveling evangelist today, you couldn't have him at your church. He could be saying, I'm a sinner saved by grace. And you'd be like, I don't know, David. I just can't get past the adultery thing. Maybe I could forgive you for. But killing Uriah the Hittite, who was a good dude, who served you and supported you, I just don't think I can get past that. It was a different time then. And David wasn't running for political office. But here's what I want to say about that. There's all right, well, let me tell you where kind of the catalyst for this was. Yeah, it was. It was, Doug. If you believe that was God, that's what it says. It was ugly, the way the baby died. And you could say, oh, well, good enough for them. They reap what they sowed. Or you could say, wow, God did that? I don't know. See, I don't believe everybody in the scripture who says God told them something. I don't think God told them that. I think that's what, it's like, I think I quoted her last week. Susan B. Anthony said, the thing I have a problem with people saying God said so-and-so is it sounds so much like something they would say. But anyway, last night, we watch a lot of series. I have like all the apps and Apple and Hulu and all of them. And when I'm with my boys, we're constantly comparing things. Like, have y'all seen so-and-so? And they'll tell me something. I'm like, nah, I'm not. Like I was never a Game of Thrones guy. Like that's not my jam. I don't really care about, fantasy like that. I do care about real stories. And even when I'm in the mood for it, I'm even very drawn to true crime stories, not because I'm trying to see gratuitous violence or something, but I am curious what makes people tick. Like how does somebody get conditioned to become a monster? And so last night, I think there's about 4 episodes that are out already. We watched, and I'm not necessarily recommending it to you. I'm just saying I watched it. It's a true story called A Friend of the Family. And it's a story about this family in the 70s who had this guy in their life who was a neighbor who apparently, from what little I've read, I'm trying not to read too much about it because I want to wait and just watch the series. He abducted their 12-year-old daughter not once but twice. And it's very interesting to see how little by little this guy, and these were super religious people. It doesn't say what their religion was, but their whole life revolves around church. And they call this guy Brother B because they know him from church. And it's really interesting to see how he got inside all of their heads, and specifically the 12-year-old girl, because from what little I've read about it, the real woman as an adult actually introduces the series and says, believe it or not, this actually happened to me. And the reason I've consented to promote this is I think there are people who just don't believe this kind of thing could happen to them. And I want it to be a cautionary tale to show you what can happen. And this is the point. The girl loved horseback riding, and he had horses, and so they kind of initially bonded around that. Started spending more and more time with each other. But what's really interesting is she was like a big sci-fi nerd. Like she really believed in extraterrestrials and all this kind of stuff. So when he drugs her and kidnaps her and takes her away in a motorhome, and when she wakes up, she's in handcuffs. But he doesn't just go right in and rape her or anything like that. He has this speaker that makes his voice sound like the voice of aliens, and that he tells her this whole thing. He's got this whole elaborate thing. When she wakes up, he's sitting there. He's got a bloody head, and he said, he said, what happened? You know, she says, I don't know. These voices were speaking about that I have a purpose and everything. And he says, so what he does, he says that you cannot tell anybody this, but your father is an alien from another, and don't ever touch him, and you have a secret mission, and if you violate this mission, your siblings, they said your siblings are going to be killed. He tells her all this stuff that as an adult you listen to and you think, how the heck does she fall for that? But if you're a 12-year-old kid who trusts people and you're already prone to believe something like that, I mean, the last episode that I watched last night is she saying her prayers, and because she finally gets back home. He does this whole thing where he takes her to Mexico, and he marries her, and they have to have the marriage annulled and all. But in the prayers, she's still praying, and she says, in the name of Jesus Christ, she's still praying to, like, please don't kill my siblings, because she's under the assumption that if she violates this thing that these aliens have told her to do, she's been called for a special purpose, that everything will go to hell in her life. And I was looking at that, I thought, wow, that's so interesting. And anybody that knows anything about how pedophiles work, there usually is a grooming process that goes on. And I use the word grooming very carefully because it's used a lot now in ways that it doesn't mean. Like if you teach children not to be homophobic, that's not grooming them to become gay. You can't turn somebody gay. But pedophiles, many times the really smart ones, know how to kind of build trust with a child and tell them that if they ever tell this secret, this terrible thing's going to happen. So my point is, once that lie is established, once this lie was established in this little girl's head, she didn't believe her parents. She didn't believe anybody because, the lie resonated with what she already wanted to believe. And I'm fascinated with that concept. A lot of famous movies and plays are based on something called the big reveal. Like there'll be something that somebody thought the whole time, and then at a certain point, it's like a plot device. At a certain point, the main character realizes that they haven't known the truth, and that changes everything. I mean, that's sort of typical plot writing. Two that come to mind. One is Gone with the Wind. I know Gone with the Wind's not politically correct these days. I don't think it should be done away with. I think if you do away with Gone with the Wind, for one thing, you lose Hattie McDaniel's amazing performance. She was the first African American to win an Oscar. I do think it should be shown with a disclaimer that says this is not an accurate depiction of slavery in the South. But I'm not. I don't support book banning and censorship and that kind of stuff. So I understand the problems with Gone with the Wind. That being said, one of the main plot devices in it is that the whole thing evolves around Scarlett O'Hara being under the assumption that she really thinks she loves Ashley Wilkes, and little by little she really believes he loves her, but he's married to somebody else and she's married to somebody else. And so, depending on how you look at it, his character, Ashley Wilkes, you could say he definitely led her on sometimes. Like there was one time he came home from war and they kiss, and she says, please tell me you really love me. And he goes, yes, I love you, but because of Anna. And, I don't know. And Leslie Howard, the guy who portrayed him, was an older British actor who played him, which I don't know what, he hated being in that movie. I don't know why he got cast for it. Because just as movie stars, it's hard to believe that Clark Gable could be waiting for you at home and you're wanting to be with Leslie Howard. But anyway, that's a casting thing. The rest of the movie, I think, is brilliant how it's cast. But the point is, at the end of it, when Melanie is dying, and Ashley's really played by Olivia de Havilland, who died a couple of years ago at the age of 104, he's like sobbing over her death, and Scarlett stands up and she goes, "You really love Melanie, don't you?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He's saying, how did you not know that? And so you can see the light comes on, and she's like, "So all this time I believed in something that wasn't even real." And so once that lie is exploded, then the other lie that she really doesn't love Rhett Butler, that's exploded as well. Suddenly she realizes, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing? I don't love Ashley Wilkes, I love Rhett Butler. I'm going to go home and tell him. That's right. Once I tell him that I love him, everything will be fine. By that time, it's too little, too late, and that's when he says the famous line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Because it's like she's done too much damage to the relationship. It's irreconcilable differences. Most of the great Hollywood love stories do not end with the two main characters getting together. Casablanca doesn't. I mean, it's usually unrequited love that makes for whatever reason. Very rarely do and they lived happily ever after things do well at the box office. At least back in the day, that was the case. So that's one case of somebody being sold on a lie. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free." It's not the truth that makes you free, it's the truth that you know. If you don't know something, then you have a whole other reality. The January 6th insurrection was completely based on a lie that people were being groomed for months before the election. The previous president kept saying, they're going to steal the election, they're going to steal it, they're going to steal it. And he said it long enough. Hitler said, if you say a lie long enough, people will believe it. And then finally people believed it, and we nearly lost democracy that day. And that's not hyperbole to say that. It wasn't just another riot. It wasn't, people say, well, it's just like Black Lives Matter. No, Black Lives Matter riots were not a threat to democracy. It's a totally different thing. So, because that was an attempt at an overthrow of an election. So, the idea is you got to sell the people on a lie. Before Putin sends people into the Ukraine, he has to tell them that there's Nazis in the Ukraine and that we need to get rid of the Nazis. There aren't any Nazis there, but it's a lie. And the people, if they're already predisposed to believe something, and then you tell them something that confirms what they already kind of think, then you're good to go. Once you get in somebody's head with a lie, you got them. If you can convince somebody to believe a lie, they're yours. Like I remember, I never watched Dr. Phil, but one day, I guess it was on YouTube, I saw something where this woman, she was in like her late 70s, early 80s, and she met some guy online who sold her a bill of goods and said he was going to come to America and marry her. And she had completely exhausted all of her life savings. She had nothing to leave her children. She had totally believed the lie. So her children had said, there's no guy coming to marry you. It's some guy sitting in an internet cafe in a third world nation writing to you. She just wouldn't believe it. So they bring her on the air to prove to her that that guy's not real and it's a scam. And they reveal the guy, they track him down. Sure enough, she sees there is indisputable proof that there's no guy that loves you that's coming to marry you. This is a scam that he's running on a lot of older women. She looks at it and says, I don't care. I know he's real. And one of these days he's going to come get me. And I thought, well, that's the thing about it. People want to believe a lie. I mean, that's all of her children on national TV showing her online. No, here's the guy's name. We tracked down the IP address. This is the computer it went from. Here's stuff he sent to other people along the same lines. She still didn't believe it because there was a romantic in her that wanted to believe that was true. So people believe what they want to believe, but the other plot device that I will mention was another movie. It was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane in 1962. During the 60s, there was this thing that happened. A lot of these actresses who had been really major box office draws in the 30s and 40s, once they were in their 60s and 70s, they just could not get any work. And so in 1962, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, who were kind of considered, I mean, legends, but not working, sort of like has-been icons. They made this movie, and it started off this genre. The French term is grand guignol, of these older women doing these kind of like schlock horror movies. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, Who Slew Annie Rue, What's the Matter with Helen? I mean, just one after another. And so it became a big cinematic fad in the 60s for these older, reputable actresses to be running around in these, many of them B movies, you know, like cutting people's heads off and doing all this kind of stuff, but, you know, you got to pay the bills. So in many of those movies are based on somebody believing a lie. Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte was based on that too, but the one I want to specifically focus on is Joan Crawford and Bette Davis they both had been actresses. Bette Davis's character had been like a child star, and then her star kind of faded, and then Joan Crawford's character, Blanche, became like a big box office draw, like in the 30s, I guess. So now they were both older women who were pretty much housebound in their house in Beverly Hills. And the reason they have this relationship is it shows you, at the beginning of it, it shows you this car coming up and a person to some gates, and a person gets out and unlocks, and then somebody comes and drives the car into the person. So you go through the whole movie thinking that sometime in the past, Bette Davis's character ran over Joan Crawford's character, crippling her for life, and now she can't walk, and Bette Davis's character is bound by duty and by guilt to have to wait on her until they both die. She's her servant. And so it picks up with Bette Davis becoming becoming unhinged and not wanting to do that anymore. So fast forward to the end. I won't go through the whole thing, but at the end, finally, Joan Crawford's character is dying, and Bette Davis drags her out to Malibu, and they're laying out on the beach, and Joan Crawford's character's Blanche has just got a little bit of time to live, and she says, Jane, there isn't much time. I need to tell you something. And she says, what is it? She says, I know you think you crippled me, but you didn't do it. I did it. I did it to myself. I was mad at you. I'm the one that had the accident. And when the cops got there that night, you were drunk. They just thought you had did it. Yeah, you had done it. They pinned it on you, and I just never told them otherwise. And Bette Davis delivers this line. At first, when she starts telling her that, because by this point, the Jane character is she's about over the edge, just lost her mind. And so Joan Crawford's laying there on the beach dying, and she's telling her this stuff, and Bette Davis goes, stop. Like, I don't want to hear the truth. And then she looks at her and she says, so you mean all this time we could have been friends? It's like, I know it's schlocky and whatever, but it's just, it's such a sad thing to think that these two women who have been forced together to live all these decades under a lie, something that didn't even happen. And which the amount of regret that she as an actress shows, like, our lives could have been so different if we just hadn't believed this lie. Because all these years, I've become like this crazy old alcoholic woman because I think I ruined your life, and I didn't even do it. And so when it says, I said all of that to say God's Spirit, source, higher power, just desires truth in the inward parts. Don't be afraid of the truth. How would that have related to David? I don't know. Wouldn't it have been better if David had brought Uriah in and said, I got to tell you something. I had a affair with your wife. That baby is my baby. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. If you can, I'll take care of him for the rest of his life. I mean, if he had had some kind of taking care of his own actions. And when David said, I wish I could just make a sacrifice, as you don't desire sacrifice. I wish I could just say, I plead the blood. And he does say it. He says, purge me with hyssop, wash me and I'll be whiter than snow. But the real focal point is, the bottom line is, you desire truth in the inward parts. God is looking for people who actually lives lives of integrity and not just go around ruining other people's lives and then say, time out, sinner saved by grace. You can't touch me. Time out. Stop using the sinner saved by grace card to justify bad behavior. And if you've done bad things, own them, especially if you've hurt people and destroyed lives, whatever. Sometimes people say, oh, the truth's just too painful for me to face. Let me tell you something about the truth. The truth is going to be there whether you face it or not. You can try to take slavery out of history books. It's not going to change the fact that it came out. In a few days, I think this movie Till is, if it's not out yet, it's about to be. It's in limited release. The story of Emmett Till, the black kid from Chicago in 1955 who was brutally murdered by these men because a woman who said he whistled at her. A white woman. He was 14 years old. And in later years, she even admitted that she made it up. He didn't even do it. Not that it would justify it. It's just like there was no truth to it. And the big thing about this, because really you could argue that without Emmett Till, there probably wouldn't have been a Rosa Parks. And without a Rosa Parks, there probably wouldn't have been a Martin Luther King Jr. Because the Montgomery bus boycott happened in 55. And King was pastoring Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery at that time. And there was a lot of upheaval in 55 because of the Emmett Till death. The Emmett Till death emboldened people like Rosa Parks to start refusing Jim Crow laws. And that gave King the catalyst to use his platform to usher in the civil rights movement. The thing about my point in bringing that up is, however they killed that boy, it was gruesome. And his mother, when they brought his, wherever they brought his casket to, she said, open the casket. I want them to, and people said, you can't show him his corpse to people. This is horrible. And she says, I want them to see how ugly racism is. And she forced them to open his casket, and thousands of people came there. I mean, people were fainting. They were throwing up. It was horrible. You can find pictures of it online. And her point is this situation is never going to get better until you see this is the face of racism. This is what racism does. And this is racism that's based on a lie. That boy wasn't threatening that white woman, and he didn't even whistle at her. So you can run from lies all you want to. If you don't confront a lie in your life, the lie eventually will come back and bite you. It's either you take authority over the lie, or the lie is going to take authority over you. And if you see that there's deep manipulation in your heart like David had, the manipulation and the plotting to kill Uriah was way worse than the sex. And until you can recognize that, wow, I was really capable of doing that, and own it and make it right. And sometimes you need to apologize, even if the person has nothing to do with you. They don't accept the apology. The fact is, you do what you can to make it right. Stop using the I'm a sinner saved by grace dodgeball, and actually be a good person. Be a good neighbor. Be a good citizen. Be somebody reputable. People say, Don't you want to work with, like if you see there's a cross or a fish on their business card, don't you want to work with them because they're Christians? Hell no. I know too many Christians. I know too many people in the ministry. I want to work with people that basically know what they're doing. I don't need a Christian to fix my car. I need a good mechanic that I can look on Yelp and people say, yeah, he does a good job and doesn't overcharge you. That's what I'm looking for. So, I'm not trying to take the cross away from you. I'm trying to make people understand that was not Jesus's intention to say, if you say, well, he died for the sins of the world. Okay, fair enough. I agree. I am a Christian universalist. I believe in ultimate reconciliation. So if you say, yes, he died to take away the sins of the world. I mean, John the Baptist said that. That's not some new fad. The Apostle John said, he takes away he's the propitiation of our sins and not of ours only, but of the whole world. Paul wrote to Timothy and said he's the Savior of all men, especially them that believe. So yes, the case has been made that positionally Jesus forgave the sins of the world. I'm not talking about stuff that's going to send you to hell. I'm talking about stuff that's going to make you a good person and give you a good life, and that you stop living your life in some fantasy that's based on wrong information and a lie. This is what I've learned about facing the truth. And one reason, if people ask me, like, how are you so confident? Because I don't have anything to hide. I've told my truth. And even yesterday, walking around Pride, I'm not, LGBTQ people are not monolithic. They're all over the map. I mean, there's even gay Republicans there yesterday, with the log cabin Republicans. They had their booth, which it's America. That's their journey. Fine. I'm looking at all these people and I think I probably would never wear that, and I probably would never do that. The feeling of connection that I have with you, though, is, wow, it's good to be free, isn't it? It's good just to tell your truth, own your truth. People say, oh, the world's turning gay. No, it's not turning gay. There's an element of this culture that always has been, always will be. You're just hearing about it more. There's no gay agenda. You can't recruit. You can't make people gay. It's just people are telling the truth. They're just tired of saying, I'm tired of you telling me that I can't get benefits. I mean, even yesterday, if you've noticed, I'm back in my previous glasses. It's a long, boring story. I had those clear frames that didn't work out, so I'm back to square one, getting the other frames that I want, which it's going to be a few days before they're in. But I didn't know I was going to do this yesterday, so when I called Pearl Optical, she said, I've left you a couple of messages. The frames that you were wanting, that's not going to work. I said, I'm not saying you're lying, but I have no record of you. And I said, I have you guys on my phone. So anyway, I could tell it was one of those, she said, I said, you know what I mean? It's like, she's like, well, I sent them. I'm like, well, I didn't get them. Anyway, she told me one of my options. She says, you could go ahead and get the new frames that you've ordered, but you'd need to get a new eye exam and start the whole process over. I said, okay, fine. When do I have to? She says, well, if you want to, I can see if the doctor can see you right now. I said, yeah, sure, great. So Ken was waiting out in the car. I ran out. I said, do you mind just waiting a minute? They're going to give me an eye exam, and I'm just going to order new glasses. He was fine. So she says, what's your insurance? I said, so I'm fumbling through my billfold. I can't find my insurance, specifically my insurance card for eyes. I said, I should be in your system. She said, so she looked, she said, who's Kenneth Marshall? I said, oh, that's my husband. I'm on his insurance. She said, oh, okay, no problem. And I thought, thank God that I can just go have a eye exam and not have to explain to this woman, your husband, what do you mean? It's like, that we live in a world where she realizes that's just not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just another thing. It's just another part of life. And anytime that happens, I'm always so grateful that, thank God, we the people actually means we. Nobody's trying to take anything away from any other people group, but just nobody's even asking for special privileges, just what everybody else gets. And that's why I tell you, I ain't marching in this parade yet, but if people get in office and try to say I ain't married, your bishop's going to get loud and is going to embarrass many of you. Any of you that are on the fence right now, you might not survive that, because I'm not. That hits really close to home. You're not going to tell me I'm not really married. So my exhortation to you is, God desires truth in the inward parts, not church truth, not public truth. Integrity is what you do when you're by yourself. God desires integrity. And that's what you need to work on. Okay? And you can say, well, you did away with the blood of Jesus. No, I didn't. I'm just saying the blood of Jesus has nothing to do with that. That has to do with personal decisions that you make about your own personal life. It has to do with your thoughts, your words, your actions, not just being an absolute jerk and then saying, sinner saved by grace. You can't tag me. I'm sick of that stuff. And furthermore, I'm loath to quote Jesus, but I get the idea. I mean, I've worked for him my entire life. I get the idea that Jesus is pretty tired of it too. So, y'all are very chatty today because I haven't read your comments, but I'm seeing them in my peripheral vision. If you want to support the ministry, go to bishinthenow, like short for bishop.com. It's simply clicking a button. It's totally easy. Thank you for those of you that still do that. That way we're able to, I don't have to sell you on the idea. It's good ground. So into it. If you want to give to me personally, I have all the apps, and I always appreciate that. Remember, if you want to go to Meditation Weekend 16, you don't know anything about it, scroll up to my cover photo. All the information is there. And I'm looking forward to seeing many of you 3 weeks from today. All right? I love you. And I'll be back on tomorrow night, as far as I know. I'll be back on tomorrow night at 11 p.m. And thanks for all your good words. It really means a lot. I really appreciate that you're as verbal as you are. I never take it for granted. That's why I screenshot your comments and post them, because they just really raise my vibration, and it means a lot. All right. I love you. Talk to you later. Peace.